Hello, my fellow tarnished, and indeed my fellow sorcerer enthusiasts. One of my favourite sorcerers in the game was Zamor Ice Storm, but it was always a little bit kind of anticlimactic and ultimately overshadowed by the Ash of War version. That is, until now.
That's a 10.
Yes, indeed. 1.07 has given this sorcery a much-needed kick. We have an increased attack power, which is always just nice, more damage, and it is a lot more damage. The frostbite happens faster, which lets us do something very fun, and just being able to cast it faster and then act after casting it faster makes it so much smoother and less awkward to play with. Basically, it's turned it into an AoE death-dealing powerhouse of biting cold, and it is so much fun to use when baked into the build I'm going to show you. And this build is actually a build of two builds, because we have the kind of boss-killing version involving the sorcery, and then we will be looking at the weapon for a more PvP-orientated focus, because the weapon does really shine there, and yes, the weapon also got a little bit of a buff, more damage, and indeed more damage to the actual weapon attack. So, without further ado, as you saw, Melania got obliterated, and as does every boss that this goes against, unless the boss is completely immune to frostbite, in which case it still does decent damage, because the sorcery itself does decent damage now, but that frostbite really is key. What's actually the concept then? Well, at a base level, we have this really fast frostbite ticking up sorcery swirling around us that does fairly decent poise damage, fairly fast now frostbite build-up, and then of course triggers the frostbite, which is a huge pop of damage akin to bleed, and then they now take more damage. Their resistance is lowered by 20%. However, if we apply even a single point of fire damage to a frostbitten enemy, it will remove the frostbite, which means they will continue to take damage from the swirling Zamor Ice Storm and then immediately get frostbite again and essentially pop frostfire off, pop frostfire off, pop frostfire off for massive amounts of chain burst damage, and that is delicious, and it works shockingly well, more so than ever thanks to 1.07. Combine that with Endure, which sadly has been nerfed a little bit since trying this out, but is still plenty better than it was before and good enough for this. We can't even get interrupted out of the cast of it, and once you've got one cast off, it's basically game over because you can just chain cast it while they're stacking around being frostbitten next to you. So the playbook is fairly simple, though there are certainly a few steps. Step 1 is, I want my build to be 15% better and I don't want to think about it. Vow, and then we put Fire's Deadly Sin on. So for that, of course, we need a random seal to make it happen. You don't even need to have the stats to use it. That's all good. Then we get our Physic going for extra damage buff. We have our Witch's Frost Hat for an extra 10% to Frost Sorceries. We get Terra Magica down for an extra 35% because, you know, we'll be camping on the spot in a Frost Storm, and that works really well with that kind of playstyle. And then, well, let the world end in ice. Absolutely beautiful. I really, really do like this one, and make no mistake, if you do catch someone with it in PvP, it will basically delete them, but it's very easy for someone to just not walk into you while you're casting it, so we kind of have to get a little bit more creative on that front of things. But before we do, what's actually powering this then? Well, we of course have the Zamor Ice Storm, which is the core here, Fire's Deadly Sin for the constant pulsing fire damage around us to keep resetting the Frostbox, Terra Magica for a big damage bump, and Golden Vow for a lesser but still appreciable damage bump. The actual build then is any given seal, a dagger with Endure, also set to Frost. You can actually do quite a good bit of nipping at people's heels with it. Lusats for that maximum sorcery scaling, at least from pure int. And we have the Frost Witch's Hat for an extra 10% damage. The rest is just kind of fashion. Then, because this sorcery is chargeable, Godfrey's gets us an extra 15%, an extra 8 and 4% respectively from the Graven Talismans, and finally a 12% bump from the Magic Scorpion on top. top. We then have the magic tier for a final 20%, and just a little bit of cerulean so we can cast the first few without using FP. It's just kind of nice, though you can replace that with your preference if you choose to do so. PvP.
Is that it? Is that it?
For this, we shift over to the Zamor's Curved Greatsword. This thing is very cool. It's got a very dancey, flashy moveset that certainly isn't the best moveset in the game, but it definitely has its pros. The delayed timing and weird timings on it really do catch people off guard, and you can get a lot of free damage in with well-timed strikes. But of course, the Ash of War is the uncharged version of Zamor's Ice Storm. Now, of course, the sorcery just plainly does appreciably more damage now when you charge it. It just kills an omen, whereas the sword does still decent, but obviously doesn't. So for pure PvE damage, yeah, the sorcery path is the way. However, this is still a very viable way of playing Fire's Deadly Sin and Ice Storm with having an actual weapon at your disposal if that's more your style. So, the build that we will be using for this then is of course just Fire's Deadly Sin and Golden Vow. Incantation wise, no need for sorceries here. And then we have the Zamor's Curved Sword, we have ourselves again the Seal, we have the Spellblade set as each one is plus 2% damage to Magic Ashes of War, of which this is, Alexander's for an extra 15%, and then 3 more rounded utility talismans to make us more effective in PvP and definitely make up for the light poise and damage resistance on the Rogier set. Then the Wondrous is very similar with more magic damage, and I would use a more survival tier in the second slot after that. This comes together then to give you a really nice option for damage. Of course, you have the swings themselves, and you have the Fire, Ice Storm, Chain, Frostpox, both of which work really well. In fact, the Frost build-up on the Curved Greatsword is exceptionally quick and really can melt people if you manage to catch them. It's a lot of fun to use and definitely gives you a little bit more of a well-rounded approach when you're PvPing, as opposed to just slowly casting the sorcery that, while it is faster now, is still quite predictable. This actually has a bit of damage on the way down when you plunge it into the ground, so you can catch people with it, give them a little bit of a flinch, and then the storm comes up and finishes them off, and that's really, really effective. It's also very fun at invading because you can clip people with the storm through walls, and that is a nice way to get some easy damage out, if not just kill them outright. So that, generally speaking then, is the two sides to this Fire, Frost, Storm build. You have the Blade way and you have the Sorcery way. Both work incredibly well at melting all that's before you, and both are incredibly fun and now incredibly, well, worth using thanks to 1.07, and I very much hope you are inspired by one or the other, or in fact, hopefully, both of them. I'm really glad this is finally working at a kind of level where I'm really happy to show you guys it and really recommend it. In any case then, that's your build for the day. Like if you have enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more. Consider supporting the future of this channel on Patreon down below. It does mean the absolute world and is what keeps us going. For now then, until next time, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.